What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we make strength and conditioning not boring anymore. Before we dive into today's episode, hit that subscribe button so you're notified when we get more great content out for you to enjoy. In this episode, I'm joined by Coach Dave Karen, where we talk about curvilinear running and why so many strength and conditioning coaches have this wrong. Inside this episode, Coach explains every little detail so that way you can help your athletes better run curves, whether they're track and field athletes, basketball athletes, or if you got to help your defensive end get and sack the quarterback better. Sorry this episode took so long for it finally to come out, but enjoy. Get CEUs faster, cheaper, and more convenient than ever before with Strength Coach Network. Hey, it's Justin, here to tell you about how Strength Coach Network can now help you out with our premium membership and CEUs to the NSCA and CSCCA. Upon signing up for our premium membership, you will get 2.0 or 10 CEUs immediately. That is an entire year's worth of CEUs that you are able to access from the convenience of your office. No traveling for conferences, no waiting on flights, no eating out, no expensive hotels. Just the good stuff from great coaches. Now, if you need extra CEUs for past years during the reporting period, we can bundle Fundamentals 1 or 2, which also come with 2.0 or 10 CEUs to your purchase. That way, you're able to take care of your CEUs for the best price, most convenient, and learn from some of the best coaches. If you want more help with this, email us at service@Strength Coach Network or visit us at strengthcoachnetwork.com, and I would be delighted to help you out. Coach, like we talked about when we were texting back and forth, and like we talked on the phone before, I am excited to just sit back and listen to you drop knowledge on curvilinear running to start with. So let's just start there. I'm going to shut up and I'm going to listen to you just drop knowledge on me and everybody else.
All right. Well, again, this will be redundant between us because we've talked about it a little bit in the past, but you've been in this game long enough that you've followed all the trends. We talk about fascia, we talk about psoas, we talk about, there's always a hot topic, right? And it has that, 15 minutes of fame that pop culture will give it. And then every move on. I found it way back earlier in a past life. I was selling wine for a wholesaler.
Really?
And people would hop from one wine to another. And it was always cool when you were in the new region where the coolest wine was, and then that wasn't cool anymore and you'd hop again. Well, getting back to strength and conditioning and athletic performance, people are, the half-life of a firefly as far as, staying on a topic, right? Well, the topic for today is curvilinear running. So let's get some things clear right now. A curve and a radius have something in common, but a curve is not necessarily radial. Okay. So when you're a track athlete, which is my background, I'm multi-sport, but primarily track and field. When you run in lane 1 or lane 6 or whatever, you're running a radius. If you ran 360, you'd complete a full circle. But on the playing field, on the court, on the grass, on the turf, tennis court, whatever, you can run a curved path that most often is not a radial line. The execution of running on a radius and the execution of running a curve are cousins, but they're not identical. And that's where we get into trouble. The challenge I'm finding is all the science is coming out and it's always titled curvilinear, curvilinear, curvilinear. And then all the testing, all the examples, all the, whatever they're trying to do to find data points is tied to a radial line, which is not in essence what takes place in most sporting activity. So the distinction between the two. I'm going to defend scientists in this case that it's difficult to analyze true curvilinear. It's easier to work with a radius. You have a set frame of reference, repeatable, that sort of thing. And I'll probably get into where I dove into this subject. I work with high jumpers, and I think high jump is kind of the transition bridge between pure radial and what I'll call free-form curvilinear, because a curve can vary, twist, and turn rather being a constant. That said, all the science that's coming out reads as curvilinear, but uses radial as the reference point. So how you run a radial curve, all right? Uh, you if you put a pin down and stretch out a tape, and then you scribe a circle, you have a circle. You have a radial line. Whatever radius that is, it's a radial line. As you run on that line, stride length and redirection and reorientation of mass would be a constant, repeatable, so you keep turning to the same degree each stride, each step. Eventually, you'll scribe a full circle, okay? But a stride length is going to shorten or lengthen, and if the degree of departure from the previous path is going to vary, it can't be radial. Follow me so far?
Yep.
Okay. A lot of PhDs either aren't acknowledging that, or they're copping out to they're really not equipped or prepared to work in a three-dimensional analysis. And that's kind of where the science is right now. A lot of people are doing good work, but I think they're kind of over-promising, under-delivering maybe. Anyway, so let's clarify some terms. All right. I think I told you, I'm almost sure I told you, because everybody I talk to these days, I use the same story. When we were little kids and we were in grade school, junior high, there was always a globe in the classroom.
I got
There
one
you
right there.
go, baby. There you go. Okay, perfect. So if you spin that thing, right, let it rip, it's rotating about its axis, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's in place. It's not moving. It's just spinning about the vertical axis, or north to south pole, or however you want to get into it. Okay. That rotation does not cause it to revolve around the sun, right?
Yep.
So you have rotation and revolution.
Yep.
If I'm a figure skater and I go into the big finish and I start twirling, I'm spinning in place, but I'm not moving in a curvilinear path or a radial path. I'm rotating about my vertical axis of my body, the long axis of my body, right? Okay. To tie the things together, that nature of rotation does not generate or supply or support revolving or revolution. So you don't turn to run a curve.
No.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Another example in real world, you ride a bike, the handlebars will turn, but if you're going along at a good clip and you want to turn left and you crank on those handlebars counterclockwise, you're not going to execute a turn. You're going to go down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. By applying lateral force, lateral pressure, inward lean results. And here are the two keys. We redirect the center of mass to the new path, followed by, and in this sequence, followed by reorienting our mass to the new path.
This is where you gave me that D-lineman example, correct?
Sure. You know, and I just want to finish the train of thought. I'm getting old enough now that if I'm on a roll and somebody cuts me off,
You're good.
I'll lose this. I'll lose the thought stream, and we're hosed. So, again, you can't do it in reverse. You can't turn to create curvature. Okay, in the same context, you don't lean to create lean. You apply lateral force. Lean is a byproduct. Okay, so if I want to go in this direction, if I start to fall inward, I'm not applying force against the ground sufficient to my new center of mass. I'm unstable.
Yep.
And that's where we talked about the NBA players. There's a virus in the NBA these days. I've never seen so many guys flop in a basketball game as over the last 10, 15 years. But it's execution of what they're trying to achieve that's incorrect to the physical laws that are in play. You have a coefficient of friction. Once you exceed that, you got problems. So the D lineman example, let me, if I don't get back to it, bring me back to it, but I'm gonna get there eventually. I work with high jumpers, and the example I'm trying to do, my friend Carl, our mutual friend Carl, and I are trying to find somebody in the software and the app world who will do true three-dimensional analysis. All the apps that are out today, again, the same way that I said curvilinear running is a hot topic. Well, the hot app is everybody's got a 3D motion analysis, right?
Yep.
It's not 3D analysis. The only true 3D analysis they do is the pitcher windup or the golf swing, because they stay fixed in the frame. In motion, nobody's really providing true 3D analysis. Okay. Or what you're getting in essence is the XY axis. You're getting horizontal and vertical. So my argument in my sport is a really good coach will tell you that was too fast, that was too slow, that was too high, that was too low, that was too long, that was too short. All those generic terms are within the 2D world, within horizontal and vertical. But transverse plane, or the Z along with XY, is true three-dimensional analysis. And that gets back to where the PhDs are speaking to curvilinear, but they're using radial because they're not getting true 3D analysis. The apps aren't doing it. The whole thing is markerless capture, so we don't have to put the reflectors on the joints. And that's great. What a boon to sport and sport analysis. But unless you're going back and digitizing the film and getting the joint angles precisely, you're using estimates. For instance, two guys that are 6 feet 2 inches tall, one has a longer femur than the other. One center of mass is higher than the other. It's not an automatic one size fits all analysis. So the product we're getting back, they're giving you to the second or third decimal point data points, but that's not the precision of the process that yields those results. So I got a little bit off track. I'm still coming back to the DNs in a minute. So the challenge now is we've got all these, here I can do your 3D analysis for you. Here I generate all these data points. A true quality coach in sport, in the movement of athletes, will see something and say, I know that was too fast, too slow, too short, too tall, too long, all those 2D data point that we just covered. They can qualify that it was too much or too little of a certain value. What the scientists do now is they're just assigning a number to the observation of a good coach. Okay, well, I'm saying it's not as precise a number as it could be, but it's a nice step in the right direction. But here's the real challenge. Most coaches don't have the ability to process live action in their sight, in their mind. And now we're assigning a number that they already don't perceive in a broader sense. Assigning values to that doesn't get at the lack of knowledge, comprehension, the lack of mental rotation. We can get deep into a rabbit hole real fast. So all these apps are out there. They're trying to do all these things, and they're kind of overselling and under-delivering is what I'm trying to say. So to get back to the D end, all right, curvilinear running is not necessarily radial, but it's a curved path. In the case of defensive end rushing the quarterback, they know that most quarterbacks are coached to have a release of the ball within 3 seconds. There's a certain count. Again, I'm not in the NFL, but they get the pass, they got to get it out. They have timing routes, they have all these things that are synced up. The D end to influence negatively that pass is got to get there before the quarterback achieves his target. So they have a fixed amount of time. They got to get somewhere as fast as possible. Well, the fastest path is a straight line to the quarterback. Well, there aren't too many bullfighters. There aren't too many bullfighters that are offensive tackles. They're not going to wave you in on a straight line. They're going to engage with you, right? So here's a concept that people might want to chew on a little bit. I'm an athlete. I have mass. Athlete 2 has mass. We engage. Think of the concept of a joint or a common mass. So there's one center of mass with the two athletes locked up. And how are we going to influence that center of mass advantageously for the DN to get to where he wants to go? Okay. So again, it's physics. It's applying force. It's not vertical. It's lateral force, right? To either move the athlete or move past the athlete you're trying to get around to get to the quarterback. All right. Now, how do you execute that? This brings it all back full circle. As you run on a curved path, radial or not, okay,
Yep.
as you apply lateral force, resultantly, you're going to get inward lean.
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
Greater lateral force, greater inward lean.
Yep.
As you start to dissipate or release lateral force, either you upright or you fall down. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that I've got less than 3 seconds to get to the quarterback.
Yep.
I know that the path isn't going to be a straight line. I know there's going to be, let's say, 5 steps or 5 strides from, jumping the snap to trying to get to the guy. Of those 5 steps, one step at a time, left, right, left, right, left, or right, left, right, left, right. That's the sequence, right? Okay. But as I'm working either from the left or right side, I have a more of an inside foot, more of an outside foot related to the lean that is generated by applying lateral force. So if I'm the left end trying to rush clockwise in a curve toward the quarterback, my right leg is my inside foot.
What's up, everybody? Taking a quick break from the show to talk about one of our sponsors, TeamBuildr. I've been using TeamBuildr since 2019 when I was at Towson. I still use it with my remote athletes. I also use it at Goldfinch, which is the private sector gym I train at, and we use it at Centennial, which is the high school that I'm working at. Now, if you're printing on lift cards because you say, oh, I can't afford TeamBuildr, guess what? TeamBuildr has a pre-written grant that you can locate on their website. You simply change the name of you, your organization, and the areas that they highlighted, and they can help you get TeamBuildr at your facility, your university, whatever it is, so that way you can optimize how you train your athletes with this software. Now, TeamBuildr is also a part owner in the Plyomat. The Plyomat is something that I utilize at Goldfinch, and it helps you be able to see how high somebody jumped, the ground contact time, and RSI. You can get all that conveniently right there. You can reach out to your rep from TeamBuildr to be able to get more information on the Plyomat. It's fast, it's reliable, it's convenient, and it's trusted by coaches worldwide. Check them out as well as TeamBuildr in the link down below.
It's more directly under my center of mass. My left foot tends to be outside foot pushing me in the direction I'm trying to run that curve on. Well, the feet perform different functions. They both apply force to the ground. Okay. The inside foot, being more directly under the center of mass, enables or can enable that vertical rotation, that long axis of the body rotation we talked about, where rotation doesn't give you revolution. All right. The outside foot has more potential because of the nature of leverage and angle. You apply force laterally, that has more potential to redirect the path of the center of mass. So to run a curve effectively, you have two functions. You redirect the center of mass, and then you reorient the mass to the new direction, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm locked up with that D end and I'm slowly gaining ground and I push hard off, that left leg is allowing me to push inward or to the tightening of a curve path to the quarterback, my next step is my right foot. That's less advantageous to apply lateral force. How do I execute that? Okay. Along with that, the nature of the long axis of the foot, how I put that foot down, because my path is center of mass. If this is my foot and the center of mass is over the top, how does that center of mass cross the foot? Ideally, we want it to come near the big toe.
Yeah.
All right. So the nature of the length of stride, the orientation of the long axis of the foot, where the center of mass is in relation to the ground contact, because this now leads into physics. Force doesn't turn a corner, right?
Yep.
Everything is vector.
Yep.
So a vector is a V, and between the peaks of the vector is a straight line, right?
Yep.
So if I'm taking a 5-stride path to the quarterback, it's 5 straight lines past the center of mass, with each straight line redirecting.
That was the dot example that you had me do with the.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Why don't you walk us? Can you
Sure.
say that again real quick so everybody that's listening, they can go through the exercise that I did, and I'm going to do it again right here too.
All right. So here's a real simple. My problem with my sport right now is high jumpers in the United States and having affected or infected international jumping. People are trying to run a 3-step curve. Well, there's no such thing as a 3-step curve. You can't reorient the center of mass to the degree you want to in only 3 steps, 3 groundings. So the example I used with you is take a piece of paper, put 3 dots down where you think the footfalls would occur in order to run a curve, right? Okay, so a curved path. So you put the 3 dots down and you use 2 lines to connect the dots, right? Doesn't look very curvy, does it? It looks triangular. Oh, I can't quite, you lost me. I don't see it. Yeah. Yep, there you go. So it's starting toward curvature, but again, those are vectors, straight line paths. So center of mass went straight to the middle dot and then straight to the third dot, right?
Yep.
In general, as you add more dots, as you add more groundings, you can smooth out or gradually create a more radial representation. So if you put 4 dots down, all right, you get a little closer to the goal. But here's the challenge with 4 dots or 4 ground contacts of each foot, right? The problem being you have what's called a curve apex or the top of the curve, right? On a 4 grounding curve, your curve apex is in mid-flight. You're not in contact with the ground, okay? So 5 steps is the most effective or efficient methodology to run a curved path.
Because there's your 4 for anybody
Yep.
that's...
So if you look at that, if you tie the 2 ends together, that's basically the chord length of your desired curve or radius,
Ah, okay.
right?
Yep.
So the peak of that would be mid-flight between number 2 and number 3. You're flying, and you're flying in a straight line, right? You're not in the ground redirecting. You put 5 dots exactly. Yep. Now, if you do that same thing, but you put a dot, there you go. The more you draw this, the more it starts to round off, right? The more curvature you get, the more you're starting to bring angular momentum into play.
And
now
now
people
that fifth,
yep,
now that third, that apex foot's on the ground.
exactly. We're constantly reorienting to the new direction, and then everything else falls into play. So the problem now, I think I used the NBA analysis, where I started down this road with our friend Carl, and I sent him a video of Jason Tatum for the Celtics. And it has him trying to drive around one of the Lopez brothers. Tatum's out at the top of the key. Lopez is on the free throw line. The basket is behind Lopez, the defender. Well, Tatum's got to get around Lopez and then back to the layup on the right side of the hoop. So he has to basically cover a 180-degree curve or radius by what I just explained, what you just showed. Ideally, there would be at least 5 steps involved. Jason tries to do it in 3. So here's the execution. He's standing there square up against the defender, and he's going to go to his right in 3 steps and assumedly get past the defender. So his first step is with his right foot. Remember, I said the right foot, outside foot in the case of a left-hand turn, further away from the center of mass, able to apply force, redirect the center of mass. Well, he executes the first step, but he hasn't cleared the defender. Now the next step is that left foot or that inside foot. And what athletes do is they know they need to get lateral force, so they cross over. So here's the first foot. They start to lean a little bit. Here comes the next foot. Instead of putting it down in sequence, heel toe, it actually crosses over the center line of what the vertical reference point of the center of mass would be. And it gets too far away from that moment to where you can't establish friction force sufficient to keep directing the center of mass. Tatum falls down. And this is where I said the prevalence of NBA players wiping out all the time. So invariably, and I say this jokingly, but invariably, the NBA All-Star gets up and he points to some poor slob making minimum wage underneath the hoop saying, come out and wipe up the wet spot. Well, guess what? There's no wet spot. He basically slapped Isaac Newton in the face. You can't do it. So they want to get there as quickly as possible in as few steps as possible, but there's a limit to how much force and how much stability you have in executing the move. And there's a different role for each foot as they ground when we're trying to run a curved path.
What's up, everybody? Taking a quick break from the show to talk about one of our sponsors, Hawkin Dynamic. I've been using Hawkin Dynamics ever since I was at Towson. Still utilize it today when I'm at the private sector at Goldfinch. Even brought the plates from Goldfinch over to Centennial to do some force plate testing with the football team there. We've done force plate testing with other high school athletes. It is something that you need to get. If you want more help with it about how to practically use it and you want to reach out to us, feel free to reach out to us at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com. Not only do I utilize it with lower body assessments, I use it with upper body assessments, plyo push-ups, prone Y assessments. You can also utilize it for what I call an upper body isometric mid thigh pull, where essentially you're doing a push-up at the strongest range and you're pushing into an immovable force, so a barbell, same way you do an isometric mid thigh pull. Like I said, been using them for years. Valid, reliable. The customer service is fantastic. Go check out Hawkin Dynamic in the link down below, and you will not be disappointed.
So if you're trying to do it in less than 5 steps, you're already challenged. If you try to do it in 3, you almost can't do it at all. Or at the minimum, the physical cost is you start to now try to cheat the system, where you put the foot down in front of each other, but now all of a sudden one foot turns a little more. That gets back to where I said you don't turn to run a curve. Well, when you turn past a certain range of motion, now you're starting to do things to soft tissue that it doesn't want to do. And you can get away with it for a while. Okay. So you don't usually get single moment, single incident traumatic injury from poor execution of curvilinear running. What it is more is a cumulative effect, or I think it's my friend Dan Paff that says micro insults, where you keep repeatedly twisting and turning things that don't like to twist and turn. At some point, they're gonna bite back. They're gonna blow up. So, John Morant right now is having trouble staying healthy. Well, look at all the 360 stuff and all the torque he's generating to create spectacular flights, but at what cost? In an NBA basketball game, when you dunk the ball, it's 2 points. Doesn't matter how flashy or how crazy it looks. It only counts for 2 points. So I'm an NBA owner, and I'm paying you $50 million. I got a judgment call here. I want to pack the stadium, so I want things to look cool, but not if it's going to cost me 30 games a year on the injury list. So all these different things. Ultimately, people can't conceive of or mentally rotate images in their brain. So when you don't understand something, you find a way to rationalize it or justify your beliefs. So coaching and performing from a belief system, not a factual science-based system, is what got us to where we are. How do we overcome that? And my challenge has been, and frankly, I'll be honest with you, I've failed over 20 years in the United States with our high jumpers because 99% of them don't run effectively and they're not being coached effectively. So I'm not sitting here trying to pontificate as some sort of expert, because I haven't been able to get through to the masses what we need to do differently for a health viewpoint or for a maximum performance viewpoint. So we have people underachieving and prematurely losing their careers because of poor execution of the task, and coaches not up to a 3-dimensional view and evaluation of performance. So that's where Carl and I are working to try and find somebody that can provide us an app that will start to cut the corner on that. No pun intended.
That was fantastic.
Like I said that in there?
That was fantastic.
Oh, tip your waitresses and bartenders. I got a bunch of them.
Good. You teed up my question about Carl, because you and Carl, he's the reason that we got connected to this. So shout out to you, Carl, for that. And it all started by talking about the injury risk in high jump and the speeds that occurs, and everybody thinks it's pole vault, but let's talk about the side of high jump that nobody talks about with the injuries and how prevalent it is.
Sure. To the average person, even if you don't know track and field, you've seen a high jumper, you've seen a pole vaulter, and the same misconceptions about curvilinear running would exist in this particular comparison. If you had to guess today, the propensity for injury, particularly career-ending injury, you would assume, the average person would assume, that pole vault is much more high risk. All the forces at plant when that pole hits the back of the box, you've been running at full speed, that jarring wrist, elbow, shoulder, low back, all those things. Then you have to swing up in the air and all the dynamics in play. And then you're falling from 18, 20 feet in some cases that typically pole vaulters would get hurt on a much more frequent and much more dramatic basis than a high jumper, right? Not the case. Literally, I mean, it's an inexact number because it kind of was my own unscientific process. But I sat down one day and I thought, over the last 10 years, how many U.S. jumpers, high jumpers, can I think of whose careers ended prematurely due to injury in the event? And I came up with 10 names without blinking an eye. So to confirm my hypothesis, I got in touch with, I used to be in charge of men's development for national team development for USA Track and Field, just stepped down the end of December. So I oversaw the event specific chairs of all the other events in the sport. And my pole vault chair, I said, hey, Brian, just off the top of your head, over the last 10 years, US top 10 vaulters, how many do you know of whose careers ended prematurely due to injury from the event? And he stopped and he thought about it for a second. He said, well, one. And then there was a little time delay. And he said, but that guy's actually trying to make a comeback. So my point being, over a 10-year period, no less than 10 athletes I can come up with in high jump, career-ending injuries, or the accumulation of those micro insults, as I mentioned earlier, 10-to-1 ratio to pole vault, but everybody would assume that pole vault has the potential to inflict more trauma and be the end goal. So it gets back to tissues work a certain way, joints hinge a certain way. There's only so much tolerance for departure from those tight windows. So everybody's sitting at home listening. I don't remember if I did this one with you or not, but if the people listening take their hands and they grab their left knee, okay? You're grabbing your left knee because we're going to turn your lower leg, and we don't want your knee to roll left or right. We don't want your thigh to roll over, okay? So as you grab your left knee, put that left foot down on the floor so that the heel is down, the toe is up, okay? Somebody who's accredited scientists will tell me these aren't exact numbers, but they're pretty darn close. You have about 20 degrees internal rotation at the ankle. So if you turn your left foot clockwise, you have about 20 degrees rotation. Then it won't go any further until you roll the whole leg inward. Okay? Go back to that toe pointing straight up and down. You only have about 10 degrees external rotation. So as that foot's extended, you can turn it about 20 degrees, and then the whole leg starts to roll. As that foot's extended, you can turn it about 10 degrees, then the whole leg starts to roll. Okay? So when I get back to the concept of running in a curved path, you don't turn to run a curve. But we have athletes that are trying to turn their shoulder axis, trying to turn their hip axis, trying to turn their foot in order to execute a curve run. That's not the case. It's lateral pressure. It's the vectors and how the vectors sequence that pattern into a curved path. Redirect the center of mass and then reorient the mass to the new path. It's hard for me because it's so clear in my head. I don't know if I'm being clear as I explain it, but it shouldn't be that difficult. So here's the thing. We talked about on our chat back and forth, certain people are gifted in certain areas. Okay. The idea of mental rotation, the idea you can see something happen in real time, close your eyes and play it back in your head. Or you can see something in real time and then you can reverse image it. For instance, when I was coaching on the college level, I had a pole vaulter, going to disprove my theory here, but just to make a point. I had a pole vaulter who was a right-hander, left hand lead, right hand high, take off the left foot. He dislocated a shoulder so many times, we had to reverse him. We had to switch him to a lefty the other way. There's very few people who can coach opposite. coach a lefty and a righty, left-hand pitcher, right-hand pitcher, left-footed field goal kicker and a right-footed field goal kicker. Certain people have that gift, that mental acuity, that spatial reality. The term is visual spatial skill. Some people have that. Most people don't, but that's okay. If you don't, you have to accept or admit to yourself, acknowledge the fact that that's not in your toolbox. So now, once you do, you're on the road to solving it. The solution is you've got to come up with tools or supports that address that shortcoming in your ability to coach and instruct athletes. Video is huge. If you're not seeing it, by taking video and replaying it, you can see what you're missing. And the beauty is, even on the iPhone, you can capture a video, and one of the first tools you've got is you can reverse that video. You can make a righty a lefty and a lefty and a righty just by selecting a button on the video replay of the screen.
Really?
Yeah, I'll pull it up for you. I've got my iPhone right here.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so you're let me see here. Take about 5 seconds here. Find a video.
That's unbelievable.
Okay. All right, so you've got that video. Where am I at here? There we go. So here's a video. You see that individual, right?
Yep.
Okay. You see that video up here? The corner up here with the arrow across the top of the pyramid? Watch what happens to the athlete when I press this button.
Holy cow.
Right? Reversed it.
Yeah.
Reversed it. So I can make a righty, a lefty, a lefty, a righty. Okay. Does that now bridge the gap between my ability to mentally do exactly what the phone did for me? Wow. Right? So sums it up in a nutshell. Some people, the greats, all right, in my sport, Tom Tellez, Dan Paff, Bushek Snyder, Gary Winkler, Randy Huntington, the greats can do that. The average guy, because there's 300 D1 schools. They're not all, they're not all equipped to that same level. That's okay. You don't need to be like the Mount Rushmore guy, but you need to accept the fact that you lack a certain skill they have. And how are you going to ameliorate that? How are you going to accommodate that? How are you going to, it's I don't want to say it's handicap access to a building, but it's in that same vein that you come up with a way to get past an obstacle. Well, increasingly today, I'm finding guys that A, are science phobic, B, they're ego defensive, and they don't want to admit they don't know what they don't know. I go to track meet and I stand along the fence and I call it liar's poker. I think I said that on the call the other day. You hear people and they're yelling out to their athletes some stuff that makes absolutely no sense. Maybe on Earth too, but that's not how it works here, right? But they can't look bad in front of their peers because there's 10 coaches all standing there, and you don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing. You don't want to look like you don't have influence over your athlete in the competitive venue. So they'll just throw stuff out that makes absolutely no sense in the world. Those people may be beyond help. You can't reach them. Well, okay. But the true people with integrity, the people that want the best for their athletes, the people that want to get at the injury history that may plague them, are going to look for things that will address their shortcomings. So yeah, there's a story that I won't get too deep into, but I do a lot of advising young families on collegiate choices. And I've got to be very careful because I don't single out college coaches or their schools because I need to get along with all of them the best I can. But one dead giveaway is if you go on a college website and you look at the injury reports and you look at the pictures of kids with a coaching friend of mine referred to one of his competitors as his athletes having knees wrapped up better than he wraps his Christmas gifts. Well, why are those knees all KT taped up?
Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about one of our sponsors, Powerlift. I used Powerlift when I was at Harvard, Maryland, and the University of Iowa. I was also part of the staff that had the new weight room at the University of Iowa, the 32-rack beautiful facility. I was a part of that. I also have Powerlift's equipment nowadays. Powerlift Strong, made here in the great state of Iowa in the great country of the United States. They're able to work with you on any customizations that you need, logos, height, whatever it is, the limitations that you have. Their equipment is strong. The people there, they're very good people. Check them out in the link down below. And if you have any questions on how to work with them, reach out to us at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com and we would be delighted to help.
Why? Well, you know what? We keep torquing on that knee enough, it's going to start barking back at you, isn't it? So that's a hint and a half that something's going on in that program, instructional based or in the weight room or somewhere, that's causing that soft tissue insult over time. It's not, taking them off the playing field or taking them off the court or the track, but it's enough that it's impairing them. And over time, the cumulative effect gets into that 10-to-1 ratio that I described a little while ago.
I remember you talked about the speeds that go into a high jump, and I was just blown away with how fast these people are. Like, refresh my memory, but then drop some knowledge on the listeners.
Sure. Well, and again, it's all physics. You can't game a. I got one coming for you in a minute. I think you're gonna love, but it's physics. If you want to jump high, you have to run fast. So for a strength and conditioning guy, if I jog into a dunk, I just walk up to the point I want to jump from, and then I have a big counter movement jump, drop the knees, big, flex the leg, right? That's all posterior chain, really, right? It's not quad, it's not front side. We don't have eccentric in the mix, but I'm limited. There's only so much I can get out of that. Why is it we run prior to a jump? Because we can generate more kinetic, more potential energy from the run than we come from a fixed stand, right?
Yep.
Okay. So if that's the case, we're going to run in and then jump. Logic says the faster I run, the higher I can jump potentially. Now, obviously, there's a maximum speed where too fast, I can't execute the movement. I can't redirect my center of mass in the direction I want to go. But there's no secret to the fact that Carl Lewis was a great long jumper because he's a hell of a sprinter, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's a whole Carl Lewis, Mike Powell story I can do if we have time for it later. But getting back to that, we're going to run prior to the jump to open up the potential to jump higher. All right. So in the case of high jump, the world record is, Sotomayor's. He's, up over 8 feet. Over the last few years, yeah, it gets better too. When Sotomayor jumped 8 feet high, remember how we talked about the chord length of the curve of that line between point to point? So he took off, jumped 8 feet, landed on the other side. He long jumped 17 feet in order to jump 8 feet.
That's insane.
So, but again, think about the logic. He needed that time to rotate the bar and get to the other side. If he'd gotten closer to the bar at takeoff, it was more of a paper clip than a broad parabola. He can't get his body to the other side of the bar. Again, it's all physics. But so here's the thing we were talking about. The high jumpers, Dr. James Becker, who's out at Montana State, he was my biomechanist for high jump in USA Track and Field. He now is the lead scientist for USA Biathlon, doing a phenomenal job. Well, he did great work, and I was fortunate to work with him and learn from him. We did some analysis. We were fortunate that in 2014, 3 different athletes, all internationals, not U.S. athletes, all jumped 2 meters 40 or better. So basically in the 8-foot range, to keep it simple for people that don't live in the metric world, 8 feet or better roughly. And we had a 4-camera array. We calibrated the cameras. Jim took it back to the lab, digitized the film, and we have precise measurements of each performance. The one screaming commonality is all 3 of them, 3 different athletes, 3 different countries, 3 different ages, 3 different development systems. One huge commonality: they were all at least 8 meters a second at the plant in order to create that kind of height. Conversely, I don't think I've ever seen a U.S. male athlete at 8 meters a second at plant. At the same time, I haven't seen a 240 jump out of a male athlete. Charles Austin and Hollis Conway did back years ago. But since then, for the last 25 years plus, we haven't had that elite performance. We've had people win medals and place in different events, but they haven't maximized their potential. So why is that? So that gets back to my running the curve. My running the curve and high jump gets back to the nature of talking about the difference between radial and curvilinear. So what Carl and I are trying to do, I've kind of convinced him in, is I see high jump curve as the transition to the stepping stone to enabling true 3D analysis of curvilinear running. Here's the divide, and here's where it splits the difference. We talked about a true curve versus a radial run, the radial run and the nature of the repetition and so on and so forth. All right. And the problem with science not being able to analyze freeform curvilinear, well, with high jump, it's not a radial curve that's run. People think it is. Diagrams and coaching stuff will show a radius. It's not what actually takes place in a high jump event. All right. But it takes place in a fixed frame of reference, and that is repeated in the same place every time. So it's not, free form like the basketball player suddenly needing to avoid a defender. It's a repetitious thing. You keep doing the same thing over and over again, and the precision of it should lend itself to performance. It's in a fixed frame of reference of about 30 feet by 16 feet box. And so fixing a camera array and capturing and being able to analyze should hopefully get somebody to an app that will provide that service for us. And then the next thing is I think I dropped angular momentum in the discussion a little while back.
Yep.
Going back to the D end and to the high jumper. All right. If I run a radial line, it's difficult for me to accelerate on a true radius, as opposed to if I use what I've got to trademark this term, progressive reduction. Okay. So progressive reduction to my thinking is each step redirects to greater and greater degrees. So I'm running a straight path, and the first step is going to vary 3 degrees. The next step is going to vary like 8 degrees. The next step is going to vary like 15 degrees. It's going to continually tighten the curve, and I'm going to get that compensatory acceleration from angular momentum. So in the case of the D end, if I'm wide out, I'm, however many feet away from the center or the quarterback directly behind center, I want a curved path, but I want to tighten that curve. I'm constantly trying to bend inward. As I create that force, I should be able to create acceleration. Now, going back to the athlete that doesn't execute a true effective curvilinear run, if you tell the average high school kid or college kid to run faster in the curve, they almost always default to uprighting themselves. They come out of that lean because they're a horizontal vertical force application machine. If you tell somebody to speed up, they default to sprint mechanics. They don't get the concept of applying lateral force and the tightening of the curve, giving them an acceleration boost. So, and then it all circles back. Then which foot is it, the left foot or the right foot in any given grounding, and the ability to apply lateral force versus redirecting or reorienting the mass in the vertical, and so on and so on and so on. But I'm going to hammer on the science one more time. It's a challenge for coaches when they read peer-reviewed work. Almost invariably, at the end of the subject, you get conclusions.
Yeah.
All right? Okay. Now tell me if you haven't heard this. In the conclusions of somebody publishing, it always says X value may, X value might. Nobody makes a definitive statement, right?
No.
So the problem is you've got a practitioner who needs to fix things or needs to improve things, and they're supposed to take it on faith that this might help. So I don't know that the science is really connecting with the day-to-day applications and the end users. And if you write a peer-reviewed work that you want to actually get traction in the real world, you got to stop writing it to your peers and start writing it to the people that need to translate it, because the average Joe doesn't get it. So there are some people that are whisperers. Some people can read a heavy duty scientific, research project, translate it, and then I don't want to say dumb it down, but make it more consumable for the average guy. That gap between finding and application is why we're not moving the needle like we could or should. So how do we overcome that? And some of it, I think that the coaching end in general may not be as committed to scientific knowledge and upgrading their understanding. At the same time, I don't think the science world is really addressing practical application of their findings. And so how do we bring those two parties together? So
Yeah.
go ahead.
No,
I'm sorry, I
you
didn't mean
keep
to cut you
going.
off.
I'm writing things down.
So we're talking about high jump and the nature of that angular momentum, that we want to see progressive reduction, that each step turns to a greater degree. So if I was drawing it, again, I don't want you to draw this on paper, but if you drew a high jump approach, you'd have kind of an upside down J shape, right? And from the straight line into the curved line, that curved line would be drawn typically as a radial line. Well, they don't run a radius, so that's not the case. All right. Now, but here's that ability to image in your mind. In reality, the first step of 5 in the curve would be the biggest circle. And then the next step of 5 would be a slightly smaller circle. And the third step would be, the circles would get smaller. Or the opposite of that would be if you drew a spiral where it tightens on itself, right? Which Fibonacci sequence. Have you ever heard of the golden rule? Google Fibonacci, Fibbon ACI, something of that nature. And what it is they call it the golden rule. It's a ratio that results in, people will say that the Da Vinci's paintings honored the golden rule, and therefore that's why they're so aesthetically pleasing. The nature of continual curvature to greater degree, and it's the best possible transition from each point as you look at it. So the ratio, it goes, I want to say 0, 1, 1, 2, and then the numbers keep falling in sequence, right? The numbers are almost identical to my concept of progressive reduction, to the point that I thought I was onto something. I'd like to say I'm a savant in this, but I dug in deep, and the Chinese, when they had their world record in the high jump, coached him to that sequence, that each step redirected, don't say turned to a greater degree, say redirected, okay? Each step of his approach progressively reduced the angle from 90 degrees down to a tack angle at plan of 30 degrees, progressively more redirection each time. And the numbers of, he turned in about 2 degrees, then he turned in about 8 degrees, then he turned in about 15 degrees. The last step was probably in the high 20s to nearing 30 degrees. Each step tightened, but it was the smoothest transition in each case to get him to the plant at the speed. We got to bring horizontal velocity. We got to have that kinetic energy, that potential energy to create that kind of height. Then there are other things. I don't want to get wonky on high jump, but you also have to remember you have to rotate the bar.
Yeah.
So there are other things that are so high jump specific. I don't want to waste your time or your listeners' time. Somebody can reach out to me if they want to get deeper into it. But here's the thing I'll tell you that is kind of sad, but is the reality of what's taking place right now. The athletes we see today don't run a true curve. They don't generate lateral pressure, therefore they don't get inward lean. And the last couple steps, if you watch video clips of kids today, watch the last 3 steps before they jump. They run a straight line to the plant. So they intend to curve, but they don't. And again, it gets too wonky, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But the last 3 steps run some near straight path to the plant, no curvature. Well, in essence, what they're doing is long jumping. Remember how I said Sotomayor covered 17 feet across the ground when he went 8 feet? Well, at the same time, Mike Powell, when he set the world record in long jump, had a peak center of mass of 6 feet 6 inches when he went 29 feet. He had to be that high to travel that far. Well, the nature of momentum being as it is, if the last couple steps before you jump are in a straight path, your momentum is following that path. You jump up, your body's going to continue to follow that path. Now, you can rotate the mass in flight, but the direction of the center of mass is going to follow the last path. So, in essence, what I've come to call high jump is long jump with a Cirque du Soleil finish, where they're long jumping, they're jumping straight up and flying straight ahead. Then they're trying to contort their body to rotate a bar that they didn't bring any rotational energy to.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's where we lost the boat. Dick Fosbury, everybody's heard of the Fosbury flop.
Yep.
Dick Fosbury was a savant. Dick Fosbury was a smart guy. Well, if you watch clips of him and he runs in Mexico City, he puts that foot down, he jumps up, he floats. It's almost effortless because he sequences all the forces to result in height of flight and bar rotation.
What's up, y'all? Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about another one of our sponsors, Vitruve. I've been utilizing Vitruve for a while now, and I absolutely love the convenience of this app. The encoder is at a price that you cannot beat compared to the competitors. Also, I don't personally like the camera apps. I've known that they continue to break down, and I really enjoy having this encoder attached directly to the bar. Vitruve does that. Not only does it do that, but it'll show me velocity loss during the set, shows me average velocity, all of it right within the app. Not only that, for the app on the individual athlete, there's a Vitruve Teams app where now, as the coach, I can see all the results from my athletes. I can API that into my team builder, and now everything that I'm trying to do, get better competition, better intent in the weight room, I am able to do with Vitruve. If you want more information about them, click the link down below, or you can ask us questions directly at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com, and we would love to answer those questions for you.
And then the kicker is he jumped 2 meters 23 to win the gold in 1968 in Mexico City. 2 meters 23, 50 plus years later, would still be top 3 in the NCAA now. How far has all the coaching intervention in 50 years moved the needle positively when a guy from 50 years ago, who, by the way, his college coach said he wasn't even one of the best athletes on his college team, but he was an Olympic gold medalist, right? So here's where the hope for the average Joe is. Every sport you compete in has freaks, right? You know, genetic freak. You know, Giannis is a genetic freak. Shannon Sharp was a genetic freak. Randy Moss, Shatan, the guy that I'm not going to mispronounce his name, the guy that's pitching and hitting a ton for the Dodgers.
Shawnee. Yeah.
Yeah,
Shohei.
you know what I mean.
Shohei,
thank you. There's always going to be outliers, right? Well, the problem is, as coaches, we don't get a team of outliers. We might get one in a decade, right? Or I'm an athlete and I'm up against somebody that's physically, genetically more gifted. How do I close that gap? How do I have a fighting chance? And it's that precision and efficiency and effectiveness that narrows the gap. And the truth is, that athlete is a more consistent performer. Somebody that's phenomenally gifted can just do a monster, performance, but they don't tend to be consistent because it's all based on physical gifts, not skill performance.
Yeah.
So give me 5 guys that do it right, and then we'll work in the weight room. We'll get them faster. We'll get them stronger. They won't ever be as fast and as strong as the freak, but they're gonna perform as effectively as possible. They're gonna get injured less. They're gonna be more consistent. When the game's on the line, I'm gonna count on them more than I am somebody who can just rip one. So it's all part. I mean, I can get crazy wonky about society and people's differences and educational, how people learn or don't learn and all that. But as a culture, we got to look at things differently because we're not just not doing it right.
So if I hear you right, people are trying to turn when they're running a curve rather than just applying the forces laterally and leaning. And I never really thought about it that way because I guess I might have been ahead of the I was ahead of the curve.
There you go.
But I was never teaching athletes to turn that way. I was, without knowing it, I was teaching them to apply the force laterally rather than doing that curve. So hopefully this helps a lot of the coaches out there, because whether you are, like you said, you have the radial turn if you're on the track, but otherwise it's not a radial because if you're the lacrosse, girls lacrosse, and you're running away from somebody, that is not a radial turn. It is a curve. and you're
Yep.
not just turning. You need to be applying lateral forces, and you have that subsequent lean. But it's important, as you had said, we're not just talking about horizontal and vertical forces, but now looking at that Z axis.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, a curve is a curve. A radius is a curve, but a curve isn't necessarily radial. And with the exception of lanes and track and field, the typical curve you see in a sport is not radial. Somebody, British, or excuse me, I think it's Europe, somebody in Europe, a couple guys in Europe, Spain and England, a couple PhDs are doing science projects with soccer. And one of them, I read so much these days, I can't forget. I'd love to attribute it to the right guy, but it's somebody out there, generated a data point where he said up to 85% of running in soccer is non-linear.
Oh, wow.
You're constantly running a curved path,
Yeah.
right? So how do you execute that optimally? It's that sort of thing. I mean, it's important. I talked about the prevalence of NBA people slipping as they, you're gonna watch an NBA game and you're gonna laugh because you're gonna see them fall down. You're gonna say, "That son of a gun, he was right."
I'm actually
But
looking forward to watching an NBA game now because of our conversation.
well, so there's just these beliefs that aren't supported by fact. So the same way I said, a radius is a curve, but a curve isn't necessarily radial. You don't turn to run a curve. There's certain truisms that you can't avoid, but not comprehending or being aware of the physical realities that are in place, you kind of bend the truth. You kind of twist it to make it make sense to you. And that's where we get all sorts of crazy stuff taking place. And it's limiting potential, it's increasing injury rate. It's all wrong, it's all bad. We got to do better. We owe it to our people to do better for them.
Amen to that. That's a mic drop moment. That's a perfect place to wrap this up. I literally could have talked to you for 3 hours, but I want to respect your time and thank you for coming on and sharing with me for the second hour. But for our listeners, being the first hour that they get to learn to you, Coach.
I'm happy to. I'm open source. Somebody wants to ask me a question, give me a holler. If you look me up, I don't have a PhD. I have no accreditations or I'm not a CSCS guy. I'm just a slob reading and trying to learn and trying to help people.
Appreciate you for trying to help everybody, Coach.
All right, man. Good talking with you.
Thanks for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, click right here for videos just like that, and make sure you click here to subscribe to our channel. Have a great rest of your day.